And the White House today saying it's okay for friends to disagree, cautiously welcoming Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's remarks in his response to President Biden's earlier criticism of the leader's efforts to enact a now paused judicial overhaul in Israel that sparked protests in the country. Earlier today, I spoke with a former special envoy for the Abraham Accords and the author of Let My People Know, the incredible story of Middle East peace and what lies ahead, Aryeh Lightstone. He's in Israel now. Let's hear his perspective. Aryeh Lightstone, welcome to our show. Thanks for coming on again.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you've just touched down in Israel. Tensions are rising there. What have you seen so far?
So you have an enormous amount of energy, and part of that energy is completely and totally destructive, and part of that energy is democracy at work. And the key is, do we allow constructive voices to win, or do you allow destructive voices to win? And I think that is the tension that exists here in Israel on the street today.
And the tensions also seem to be rising between Israel and the U.S. after Biden suggested that Netanyahu walk away from his proposed Supreme Court reforms. How do you see Biden's move and the response?
Highly inappropriate for the U.S. to be meddling at the highest level into what is a robust Israeli democracy. You don't see the U.S. meddling in other non-democracies in terms of how policy should wind up working out. It seems a little bit almost crazy where President Biden is interfering directly with the elected leader of the state of Israel on an issue, even to that extent, pressuring this prime minister to take specific policy steps that arguably he was elected to do the opposite for.
And the U.S. and Israel rarely clash publicly. Does this mark a change in the relationship, do you think?
I don't think it's a permanent change in the relationship. I certainly hope on behalf of the United States that it is not. I know when we had an opportunity to help the U.S.-Israel relationship, we disagreed all the time with Israel, but we did it quietly. In the Middle East, when you create a vacuum of space or disagreement, it allows the bad actors to rise up. And what President Biden is allowing right now is to create distance in between the United States of America and Israel. And that doesn't help our number one ally. In fact, it helps all of their enemies.
Now, some experts have said that Netanyahu's proposed reform is necessary, that many in the country are actually on board. What do you think?
Yeah, without a doubt, there's a difference between policy and procedure. Had somebody else introduced the reform, it likely would have been met differently. Now, is the reform perfect? Absolutely not. Should it be negotiated on? Absolutely, it should be. And that's how democracies choose what their future should be. But if you were to just take a person off the street in Israel and say, is there a percentage of this reform that you would agree with? My guess is more than 80% of Israelis will agree with more than 80% of the reforms as they were proposed.
Critics are saying that the reform threatens Israel's democratic system. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, if the reform is passed as it is right now, what it would threaten is the ability to pass legislation with cooperation. The reforms don't threaten Israel's democratic fabric. What it does is it says judges need to be chosen in a way that has some form of accountability. Today, judges are chosen by other judges, and they're able to go ahead and adjudicate the laws that the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, comes up with based upon their own feelings of these esoteric words called fairness and justice. Israel does not have a constitution, so every judge that is practicing the laws from the high court is using their best judgment. So couple that with the fact that the group of judges chooses the next group of judges, you have a very arbitrary group of people deciding on the laws of Israel without any checks and balances. So this actually brings Israel closer to democracy, not further away from it.
And so what do you see as the best way forward for Israel on this issue?
Look, Israel is weakest when it is divided. Israel is strongest when it's most united. I do believe that the 80-80 rule applies. 80% of the people believe in 80% of the reform. The country should come together and decide that this is the reform that can be passed with the broadest possible support and move forward. And I would call it bipartisan, but there are about 11 parties. So 11-party unanimity on this to be able to move forward. The threats are very real today in Israel. Iran and Saudi just signed an agreement. Iran is advance their nuclear stages to a level that it hasn't been seen in our lifetime. Ukraine, Russia, Syria, Hezbollah. There's a lot of challenges. Terrorism is on the rise in the West Bank. This is not the time to be rallying in the streets against each other. It's the time to be rallying in the streets for each other to promote a safer and more secure Israel.
Aryeh Lightstone, former special envoy for the Abraham Accords and author of Let My People Know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.